this has to do with, this testimony has to do with past relationships, the mistakes I've made, and hopefully some people can learn from them and not make those same mistakes. Little bit of background. I was at the age of 19, I was very naive. I was very childlike in my thinking. That's not to say that I was just, that's not to say I was like, had an immature character. I mean, I was very childlike. I was very naive. So naive. I believed everybody was kind. I believed everybody was just open to be nice to people. I believed that everybody was, you know, just friendly and positive and just full of light, you know, and it wasn't a bad thing to think that way, but it was also, you know, I don't feel bad for having been so naive. I do feel regret for having trusted some people and for having been just so open to anyone and everyone. You know, I was easily duped. I was easily tricked. I didn't believe people lied, I guess you could say. I was very much like underdeveloped socially, so I was gullible. I was underdeveloped socially in every way because I was very underpracticed. I at that point in my life, I think I only had about 3 friends up until the age of 19. So from the age of 4 to the age of 19, I probably had about 3 friends in total throughout all my childhood and teen years. And throughout my youth, I had about 3, maybe 4 friends that, well, I'll say, well, technically I had 2, and the one I grew up with, and she was a cousin, and the other 2 were these 2 guy friends, and we were all just a bunch of big kids. So, you know, I didn't date throughout my youth. I never had a boyfriend until I think it was my late 20s. I'm not sure exactly how old I was, but so yeah, I was very naive. I didn't have a lot of what's the word? Practice, you know, to go on. No history to garner knowledge from. You know, I was a very childlike, and so when I would get hit on, even in my memory, I don't think it ever actually happened often, but when it did, I would be like, my thinking was, oh yay, I'm making a new friend, you know, and I was just very naive, and I didn't realize what was going on, because in my head, I didn't think like that, you know. I didn't know what flirting was, and I still don't. I'm married, and I've never flirted with my husband when we were dating, so anyway, and so throughout my 20s, I would go to the clubs a lot when I was backslidden. The first part of my 20s, I would read the Bible often. I went to Bible college. I kept to myself. I didn't, you know, some people go to Bible college and they come out with a husband or wife. That was not me. I don't even think I came out with yeah. At that point, I made a friend, a best friend, 2 of them. Anyway, so I was very, yeah, even, it was like a culture shock. It was, suddenly, you know, you're alone most of your years, literally by yourself in my little apartment. I was alone physically, just, you know, I cannot emphasize that enough. Like, I did not socialize at all. And and then to get thrust into this new culture, and to get thrust into social situations. It was a lot for me to take on. And you know, when I first my first year in Bible college, actually, I you know, when you give your heart to God, He gives you a heart of flesh in exchange for your heart of stone. And with my new heart, all my stony cavity that I put around my heart to protect myself, those walls were gone. And so all these issues that I had in the past, past abuses, bullying from the age of 3 or 4 until the day I entered Bible college, actually, had a lot of heartache and trust issues, excuse me, abandonment issues, fear of people, fear of men in particular. The year before I entered Bible college, I was assaulted, and what came out of that was a lot of rumors spread about me. My cousin, who, I have a lot of cousins, so I'm not going to say which one, but my cousin, who I went to go visit on my home reserve where the assault took place, after I left, she spread a lot of rumors about me, saying that I was promiscuous. I said these things. I'm not sure about everything that she said, but there were a lot of rumors. And you know, and guys would a lot of people that I don't know got in on the fun, I guess you could call it, because they seem to revel in it. And you know, men that I've never met would then say stuff like, you know, those rumors that guys do, I don't know why, but they say stuff like, I had her too, you know. And I was a virgin when the assault occurred, and so I wasn't anything. I didn't know how to flirt. I didn't know how to talk to people in an adult way. I was just like, hi, what's your favorite color? You know, I was like just a big kid. And so that was a shock. That was a traumatizing thing that I had to deal with. And from what stemmed from that was I chopped off my hair, and like it wasn't, I didn't go to a salon. I got scissors, and I was just like, cut here, snip here, snip here. It would look like a rat's nest, and that's what I was going for. I wanted to be as unattractive as I could possibly be. I stopped wearing makeup. I gained weight on purpose. I started wearing men's clothing. My shoes had a high heel. I'm 5'10", but I wore men's boots that made me like even taller, you know. And I just wanted to look intimidating and scary and unappealing. And I became angry towards men. I started to hate men. I started to be afraid of men, because in my mind, all men were predators. That's how I thought. All men were just no restraint in my mind. And that's when I went to Bible college. I received my softness back. And that started the healing process. It was not easy at all, because in Bible college, actually, the first year, it was me, all the softness coming out. It was all the healing, the issues coming to the surface of what I had to deal with, and I didn't know how to deal with it. And I didn't know how to ask for help. Remember, I wasn't practiced socially, so I didn't know how to ask for help, who to help. Some concepts were not there. I'm dealing with this new culture where I'm breaking a lot of social rules because I don't know what the new social rules are. You know, there's stuff that you're able to do freely in native culture that you cannot do in the cities. You know, and because I'm from Canada and I was born Canadian, people just figured that I was like them. That was not the case. And my second year, they say every year is different, and the second year was so different. It was I lost weight. I lost my religious mentality. You know, when I first entered Bible college, I had all these weird rules that I don't even know where they came from. Like, I believed women should not wear makeup. Women should wear long skirts, only to their ankles, no shorter. You know, I had all these weird, strange ideas that I didn't even get from the Bible. But I grew up religious, and I watched movies, so maybe that's where I got those ideas from. And thank God I cast those off. You know, in the second year, I started wearing makeup again. I lost the weight. I started dressing in women's clothing. You know, I tossed out all the men's shirts. And I just started looking more like myself again. And people started, not people, I should say, I started to gain attention again. Like if I was going to the mall, some students in Bible college, you know, they noticed, but you're not, you know, there are some people who are actually level-headed, so they didn't care. So that was nice. What else? And then I graduated. But my second year was actually pretty tough because the bullying started. The religious people, you know, the only people who went after Jesus were the religious people, the Pharisees. And it's still like that today. They hated him for no reason. And Jesus himself said, they will hate you for no reason. And that was what happens. You know, everyone had different reasons. Some of them were just like terrible in their, I don't know how to say, their hearts were a little cold, you know. And I'll have to save my Bible college story for another video, because it deals with a lot of the topics of religious mentalities, bullying, slander, stuff like that. But I was having a very hard time my second year. And so I came out of Bible college disillusioned. And when I went back up north, which I should not have done, but I did, I did not feel led to move there. I felt led to stay in St. Catharines, where I went to school, Bible college, but I disobeyed and I went back to my hometown in Timmins, Ontario. And from there, I went back to, you know, and this is not an excuse, but this is just what happened. I became disillusioned, and I was like speechless with what I had gone through in Bible college of my last year. It was very not like Christ. The faculty, a lot of the staff, how they treated me, what they did and said, and what most of the students, you know, I've got a very quiet personality. I don't like to talk much, but when I do, I'm very extroverted, so I don't know how to define myself. But when you're quiet, I believe people, you know, you're like a blank slate, and people, if they're insecure, they project their insecurities onto you. Like, I literally could just be standing there at church, you know, and just looking around, and they would look at me, and if they're insecure, they would say like, wow, she's being a real jerk and antisocial, and, you know, and that's very similar to what happened. But whereas someone was secure in themselves, they would just be like, oh, let's go say hi, you know. Or she's literally just standing against the wall, probably waiting for a seat or whatever, you know. They don't think it's about them. Whereas an insecure person will see a quiet person, and that blank slate, you know, that clear canvas, they'll paint, they'll project whatever is inside them onto you. And I think that's part of what happened. Also, because I was quiet, I'd never defended myself. And even today, it's not something I do. I'm not really one to defend myself if someone's being a bully. So it was a very hard year in my life, in my adult life. And yeah, I'll have to save the details of that for the other video. But I came out of there, and I think I was 24, I'm not sure. And so the later part of my 20s, I would go back and forth from church, and then I would go to the bars, you know, and I enjoyed dancing, so that's what I did. And because I didn't know how to socialize, I would not be social. I would only go with my sisters and and another family member, and someone in my family member had a drinking problem, so we would go often. I'm not going to say which one that was. That's not my story to tell. But I would. So it wasn't like when I was 19, where I would go and I would dance, and I would not dance like anybody else. You know, for Native culture, it's kind of a joke. They do like this weird shuffle thing, and they look around, and you know, and they're not really moving much. They're literally, you know, just. I didn't dance like that. I danced like a lot of girls in the music videos did, and no Native woman did not like that. So they would call me promiscuous, but they would not use that word. Even when I was a virgin, they would say that, and they would glare at me, and some of them were very exuberant, I guess you could say, in how they expressed that. But you know, all in all, it was all behind my back, so it was nothing that I faced in person. And when I went back to Timmins in my late 20s to dance again, I would dance the same way, and I was back to being my thin self, and I wore makeup again, and I wore women's clothing again, and my hair grew out, and I entered Bible college looking like a big, scary, standoffish person, you know, with shorter hair, and I was overweight, and I came out looking more like myself. And so the bullying started again with people that I have no clue who they are, and the rumors started. And my cousin, who, you know, because I disappeared to go to Southern Ontario for school after about a year after the assault, almost a complete year after. Anyway, I re-emerged. People didn't know I went to Bible college. They didn't know that those rumors were false. So they thought I was promiscuous again because of the rumors that my cousin was still perpetuating, and because of how I danced. Yeah, so, but at the same time, remember, I hated men, and I thought all men were predators. So I developed this fear. If someone was standing too close to me, I would like try to assault him, or I would pick a fight, like a physical fight. You know, I used to carry something that would scare anybody, and sometimes I would use that to try to pick a fight, or, you know, in my mind, he's getting, you know, if a man was standing close to me, in my mind, I would think he's gearing up to assault me, you know. And that was the end of my 20s, from the age of, I think, 25 to 29, 30. And what happened? 29. Because I started to heal, and I wanted friendship again. And the only people that, because of all the rumors, the only people that wanted to get to know me were, you know, this one guy. But he had his own issues and hatred toward women. How do we... anyway, so when I was 29, my friend, who I met in Bible college, she had been inviting me to India for years. And finally, you know, they finished building their house. They had a room for me to come visit. And in 2011, I was 29, and they said, come visit. So I got my visa. They said I could help out with the school and the orphanage, and I thought that's you know, I was starting to read the Bible again and pray more, and I had this unction in my spirit that I'm going to India to help with something. Maybe that's it, I'm not sure. Well, I went to India, and it turns out that God would have me be there for my friend. She was it was bad. She was having a hard time. But that story is for another video. I ended up coming out of India and back to Canada in December of 2011, and it was time for me. I did everything that I could while I was there, just by being there, you know, just by being her friend and reminding her of certain things and helping her to feel human again, you know. I came back to Canada in December of 2011, and I came back disillusioned. Not disillusioned, no, what's that word? Culture shock. You know, because in Canada, you're suddenly able to sit down for 5 minutes, or you can walk around, you can go for a walk all by yourself. You know, as a woman, you can't do that over there. And also in India, there's this misconception that Canadian and Western women, they kind of tie us all together, or they kind of tied me all together, because, you know, America, it's just one landmass. So they thought, in their minds, some of the people I've encountered who expressed it, they thought that Western women were, you know, just eager to sleep with people. That was my experience and what was expressed to me verbally. Misconceptions, like holy cats. So can you imagine someone who, coming from recent years of the trauma of child abuse and physical, I don't want to say, I'm not sure what I gotta be careful what words I use. Starts with an R, rhymes with ape. And, you know, I would carry something around in Canada to protect myself and defend myself, and I would get into fights with men, and I thought men were predators. To go from that mentality to go to that country and that culture, and I'm not saying it's like that everywhere there, but where I was and what I've encountered and the way men would look at me and my friend, it was even to talk about it, it was not. I was glad I was with my friend. I was happy to be with her. And a lot of the stuff that she said she dealt with, she actually dealt with. A lot of the negativity, it happened. You know, it was not easy to witness. It was not easy. To go through some of it myself, you know. And I got the least of it. I was just a guest. And like Jesus said, they would hate you for no reason. And it was so toxic where she was. But anyway, so I came out of that and came back to Canada, and it was culture shock, because everybody was so free. Everybody was so free. In their minds, they're so accustomed to freedom. And I came out of that and I was just like, you know what, I want a cigarette, because I, you know, that was me asserting my freedom. You can't smoke over there. And so that was as soon as I got off the plane, I went to the duty free shop, and I bought myself a pack and a pack of smokes. And I was like, as soon as I exited the airport, I lit it up, you know, and I was just like trying to reassert some form of freedom. And I was shaking. I was like, I'm back in Canada, like I'm safe, it's okay. I came out of a highly toxic environment. And I spent the month of December, I'm not sure where I was. I got a room rental in North Bay, Ontario. I wanted to move somewhere where I did not know anybody, but I wanted to be close to a lake, like I was in St. Catharines. We had Lake Ontario. And in North Bay, there's a lake there, so that's why I chose that place. And the following month, January, I got a job at a mine in Northern Ontario, a gold mine, and I was there for about 10 months. During that time, I lost more weight, and I became more like myself. I grew up my hair even more, so it was like waist length during that time. You know, not the smartest thing to do if you have to wear a hairnet, you know. Anyway, and so I have a cousin with the same name. We both have the same name. She is my first cousin. We are both named after a family member. It's a family name, and you know, this job was in Northern Ontario, so some people thought that I was my cousin, and because, you know, she actually had friends, and she was social, and people heard about her, but, you know, people heard about me too from those false rumors. So I'm not sure if people knew who I was, or if they thought I was just my cousin, or, you know. So socially, I tried. I was so happy to be free and alive and in Canada again. I tried to be social, but, you know, the kind of personality I have, I'm very exuberant. I was still very childlike. I was like a big kid, you know. I think I annoyed some people with my sense of humor, and I was just always positive, always smiling, always, you know, in the hallways, just smiling, just happy to be alive, you know. I tried to be social, but, you know, 2 weeks at the mine, 2 weeks in North Bay, it just wasn't happening. But I think God wanted me there at that mine specifically for a couple people, and I don't believe I passed those assignments because of where I was spiritually. I wasn't reading the Bible as I should have. I wasn't praying. I had some defiance in me in general, because I think having come out of the environment of the country I was in, and to come to Canada and suddenly you're free, it was like recess, you know. And to get off work and to go back into civilization, it was recess, you know, and I just wanted to have fun. And that was how I spent most of 2012. And now we're getting to the relationship part of my testimony. I think it was, I'm usually good with dates, usually. So it was August in 2012. I was living in North Bay, but I went to Timmins, Ontario. That's where I would travel through. I would spend the night at one of my sister's house. So the next day I would catch a flight to the mine where I worked. And on my rotation off, and I remember I have a background in the occult. So if anybody has the same background, they will know, they might pick up the importance of this time frame. It was the night of the blue moon in August 2012. I should have caught on. I should have been more knowledgeable, you know, especially having come out of Bible college. But you go there to get fixed and get the basics. You don't go there to, unless it's accredited, which that school was not. So anyway, I should have caught on, but it was the night of, I didn't. It was the night of the the blue moon in August, and I guess the importance of that can, maybe I'll make a video on that, I'm not sure. But I went to a club, a dance club with my sister, because I never go with anybody else. I only go with my sisters ever in my life, you know. And at that point, up until that point, and so I drank too much. I got tipsy, and I saw somebody, a guy, and he looked like somebody that actually I met briefly in St. Catharines. I mean, from the side, in my mind, like, even to picture it, I still see the guy that I met in St. Catharines. I was like, hey, you know, and I was like, it's wild. Like, in my mind, I still picture it was the Bible college guy. And I was like, oh my gosh, you know. I went up to him and I said, hey, are you so-and-so? And he said, no. And I said, oh, really? Because even looking at him, I was like, oh yeah, no, you're not him. And we got to talking outside. It was after bars, so everybody was outside. And yeah, we just got to talking. I was with my sister as well and her boyfriend at the time. And her house was not far from the club, just a few blocks away. So we all started walking back to her place. And I'm chatting with this guy, and we ended up sitting outside talking from 2 something in the morning until about 5 a.m. and we were just chatting away. And I remember, and this is important for those people that have that background in the occult, you'll pick up some details, or not, I don't know. I felt comfortable, and he said, and I told him that, I was like, this never happens to me, but I feel comfortable with you. And he said, me too. And that was uncharacteristic of who I was at the time and where I was, like, emotionally and mentally, like the way I thought, my frame of mind, like, because remember, like, I would go to the clubs and have fun with my sisters and dance, and I would not dance like other people, other Native women, and I didn't do that Native shuffle, you know. And yet I met a dude, and I was not wanting to hurt him. That sounds crazy, I know, but that's just where I was at that point in my life. And I was not thinking he's trying to assault me. I was not thinking this guy's a bad guy and I have to get away and I have to protect myself, you know. I was comfortable, as if I was talking to a person. And yeah, he said me too. We started chatting, and he left at 5 a.m. We literally just sat outside talking, and he left at 5 a.m. We made plans to meet soon after. We exchanged phone numbers, and from that day forth, the next day, I think we started texting, and we started seeing each other regular. And when I would go to work, I would call him, and, you know, we ended up getting in a relationship. This was not a good relationship. And, you know, in retrospect, looking back at the signs, you know, being my first time getting to know somebody romantically like that. Like, I had been on a date before, and I had dated I think it was around the time I wanted to get social, 2011. That's, I dated a couple times, yeah. And but was still so naive, not practiced, you know, socially in any way, gullible. I thought, you know, and you don't, it's not like something you think about, you know, it's not like, wow, this person is going to be kind and happy, and it's just, you just kind of expect that, you kind of expect that type of behavior automatically from people, and I expected that from him. Like, I just thought people were, you know, nice, honest, kind. I thought everybody was like that for the most part. Except when I was, like, you know, afraid of dudes. Anyway, so we started our relationship, and that, you know, fast forward to, I think it was October, I couldn't work at the mine anymore. It was affecting me physically. Like, I was getting stomach cramping, like as if someone punched me, you know. I was like so bad, and I would start to faint, and I was like, okay. And the stress, I was being sexually harassed by a boss. A lot of employees were, but I think I took it the hardest because he seemed to target me the most. And with all the evidence that the bosses garnered within one day, that's all it took. They decided, okay, look at all these people. He you know, he got fired, and that was a huge thing. Like, it was a stressful September at work for me, and I couldn't do it anymore. And I quit. And I got a call from my boss, and he said, you know, that cook, that chef, he's not coming back. It's gonna be okay. Like, you can come back if you want. And I said, oh, really? You know, so I went back in for a rotation, and I thought, okay, no, I can't be here anymore. I'm done. I gotta go. And so I quit for the second time, and that was very stressful. I ended up, yeah, and I didn't know what I was doing, you know, for work. I just kind of was so happy to not be there anymore. And so I would end up staying with the guy I was seeing, the boyfriend. But remember, it was not a good thing. Not just because it was, you know, out of wedlock, but even by the world standards. And I was so naive that I didn't. And people think that I'm like them, you know, or people thought that I was like them. They thought that I just knew stuff, or I just had experiences for some reason that they've had, you know. But no, I like very underpracticed in life, in relationships, and socially, and naive to the core. And so he would end up doing a lot of bad stuff. Like, he would lie to me, he would lie about me. He was worried about, what was he worried about? He wanted to quit drinking, is an example. So I said, okay, you know, I'll be supportive. Yay, let's do that. And so his cousins would come over to his place where I was staying with him, and they would have a case of beer, and they'd be like, yeah, let's hang out. And then my boyfriend, sitting right beside me, would lie to them to their face, right in front of me, and say stuff like, she won't let me. You know, he'd point to me literally like this and say, she won't let me drink. And I remember like sinking and looking at him, like, and I was disgusted, because I thought, what a coward. Like, have you no courage of your own convictions? Like, why would you just say this and this? Like, why not just say, I don't want to, or I want to quit? Like, why lie about me, you know? And his friends, they were like, start to glare at me. And I don't blame them, because, you know, because he said that. And also, what really got me was that I don't date weak I don't want to, like, I don't want to be seen as some, because I worried, you know, the fear of man. I didn't want to be seen as someone who preferred a weak spouse, you know. And that's what that was to me. That was cowardice. That was weakness. That was like, the woman is supposed to follow the man. The woman is supposed, you know, because I had my Bible upbringing throughout my life, even though I wasn't consistent following Christ, I still had those teachings of, you know, the woman is the ezer kenegdo. The woman is the support. You know, I'm not supposed to tell you what to do. I'm not supposed to be your boss or be your whatever. You know, that's, to me, is disgusting. The woman is not, you know, with a whip. You know, the woman, and the fact that he would pretend to be whipped, I guess is the term, was disgusting to me, because it made me look like I was a dominant figure in his life, and I didn't want to be with a man who was, you know, could be dominated. I wanted a manly man, and he was not being a manly man when he did that, you know. And so that is something that started to bother me. And it was things like that, little things. He would start to get on me about my looks. You know, he was insecure with his physical shape that he could not control because of, it was hormonal. And I'm not going to say what that is, but so he would get on me about my looks. You know, he say, you should, what would he say? Lose weight more. You should color your hair, just stuff that, you know, guys should never say to a woman. And in my mind, I was like, what's wrong with it? What do you mean? I couldn't figure it out. And, you know, being a big kid in my own head, I was like, but I like it, you know, but this is how I look, you know, and I was like this when we met, you know. And so it was stuff like that, and we ended up getting on and off, where I would leave, and then I would come back, because I had a soul tie. And a soul tie, for those new to the faith, a soul tie is when there are two different types. There's one, the soul tie that you get from being physically intimate with somebody, and this is their soul, and what happens is you cleave together. This is you and this is him, your souls, your mind, your will, your emotions. That is what makes up the soul, those three things. And so your mind is tied to theirs, your will, your free will is tied to theirs, and your emotions are like, how you say, the new preset is toward them, if that makes sense. And so we had a soul tie, and the other soul tie is called a soul tie of control. That's where it has nothing to do with being physically intimate, and that is an unholy. Those two are two examples of unholy soul ties. There is a holy soul tie. There's two different kinds, where, you know, King David had Jonathan. They had a soul tie, friendship, and that was holy. And there's the other soul tie, which is through marriage. It's made after getting married, and that's another example of holy soul tie. And so the one we had was unholy, and therefore it was toxic in a lot of ways. I wanted to leave so many times, and I did, but because of the soul tie, I ended up going back. And I didn't know about soul ties at the time. I didn't know, excuse me, I didn't know a lot about them. And because I was not living for Christ, I did not, you know how to learn more. I didn't have a phone, so I couldn't go on Google, you know. And so that was the remainder of 2012, yeah. And I was spent with him, you know, and he wanted to move to Ottawa, and he wanted me to come with him. And he said we would have nothing, it would be an adventure. We would have have to find a place after we get there. We would have to find jobs after we get there, and that was the plan, just to go there homeless. You know, and that's not a smart thing to do when you're not living for God. You open doors, like I had already opened doors, spiritual doors, with the soul tie and with the disobedience and just not living for God. That's not a safe thing to do. And so I said, okay, yes, you know, I had moved out of my apartment. I was staying with him already. And I said, okay, let's do that. Let's go. And we started making plans, and following, by the end of January of 2013, yep, we left. And you know, the whole relationships were just the lessons I did not have to learn that way. I did not have to learn through experience, but I was living in rebellion, so I did. And we ended up at a hostel for, I think it was not long, maybe a week or two, and I got this unction in my spirit, like, I have to go or something bad is going to happen. You know, I could still hear the voice of God. And I just felt like I have to go or something bad is going to happen to us or to you. And so we agreed that I would go to North Bay. And so I went to North Bay for a few weeks. I found a room rental. It was just me trying to figure out, okay, what do I do now? And I ended up breaking up with him while I was in North Bay. And when I left, I could tell because he was starting to actually care about me, because he cried when I left. And when I broke up with him while I was in North Bay, he would send messages and saying, if you got an apartment, please come back. Not apartment, room rental, please come back. And basically I went back for a visit, and that started the on-again part of that relationship, that toxic relationship. And so I would have to go back to North Bay, and I got the rest of my stuff, and I went back to Ottawa to be with him again. These are like, if God tells you, oh, when I first met him at that bar that night, the Blue Moon night, even though I was tipsy and drunk, basically, I remember hearing the voice of God saying, stay away from him, but I did not listen. And so there we both were, not living for God, but I was born again. But I, you know, with a soul tie. And from February, March, April, oh my, we were there for a few months. Struggling, you know, struggling to find an apartment together, struggling to work. And we clung to each other for comfort and because we didn't want to leave. And but I think it was in April when I started to have cringy moments. You know, I started to feel cringe. I mean, like one day he found a job at a how is it called? A labor ready, I think it's called. So one morning we left because I was, you know, we didn't have our own place. He had a room rental, and I would hide in his room. It was that bad. I would hide in his room. And when it was time for him to go to work, we would go to the Redo Mall, where the buses go. And he would catch his bus, and one morning, I think it was the start of the cringe feelings that I was having. He said, as he was about to jump on his bus, he said, "I love you." And I pretended not to hear. I walked through the doors, And I cringed. I was like, that's not right, you know. And I'm thinking, I could feel it, like I remember feeling that's not right, you know. And that was just the first of all. Secondly, I didn't believe him, you know, and I didn't believe that he meant it. And I don't know why he said it, but it was the start of all the little cringe moments. And he would start to get angry more often. He was impatient. He would start to get impatient, and it was just starting to build up all the reasons, you know. It was like my eyes are opening to all the reasons that I did not belong there. And I you know, it's when you're following Christ, you don't belong in those situations. You don't belong in a place where you know you're in rebellion and bad things start to happen. You know, God just wants to protect his babies. He's not trying to be controlling. He's not trying to ruin people's funds. He sees what happens tomorrow and the next day and months from now, and you know, he sees everything. He's just trying to protect his babies. And so when he initially told me to stay away and I didn't listen, he saw these things, these situations, and how I was being spoken to by someone I wasn't even supposed to be with, you know. And so that was April, and that's when I decided that so that was the month of April. I decided that it's time for me to go, and I started feeling these unctions to leave, and it started to get like daily, these thoughts like I have to go, and I have to go, and I have to leave, and I don't know where I'm gonna go, but something, I feel like God is telling me to leave. And throughout the whole month of April, it was like it started to become more urgent. And so I told him I have to go. He said, where are you gonna go this time, you know? And I said, no, I have to leave, and this time it's gonna be for good. I have a feeling in the core of my being, like it's a strong feeling, and it's not going away. It's only getting stronger as time goes by. And I said, I have to go. And that was at the end of April. And he said, okay, but just stay for a while, and we can have a proper goodbye, you know. And he wanted to work and save up money so we can do something special. And my mom ended up coming to Ottawa, I think for a court interpreter, that something to do with court. She works with the Ontario Court of Justice. So she came to Ottawa for a month, and had a hotel suite. And so I went to go stay with her in the hotel suite. And it was nice having my mom around. It was a comfort and a relief. And I think I enjoyed staying at her suite more than staying at his room rental. Mainly because I didn't have to sneak around, you know, because I wasn't supposed to be in his room rental. It was single occupancy. And so I stayed in Ottawa for the month of May. My sisters came to visit, my sister and my other cousin, and they said, okay, let's go, let's get you out of here, because they saw all the red flags in him before I did. They saw all these just big red X's, like, you should not be with this guy, come to Timmins. And I was like, my stuff's at his place, that's the number one too. Timmins, what am I gonna do? And like, no, I don't belong there, and where am I gonna live? You know, like, I don't see a future if I go to Timmins right now. I just would end up nowhere in life if I go to Timmins. And they didn't know what to say to that. And they, you know, but I had this feeling that I have to go to St. Catharines. And so they left, and my mom it was time for her to leave the hotel and go back. Her contract had ended, and she was going back up north to Northern Ontario, and my stay there would be finished as well. And I said to him, okay, well, I've got to go now. There's a sense of urgency, and there was a sense like it was like daily. It was like it would not shrink. It would only get more intense every day. Like, I have to go, but I have to go now, or I'm going to miss something. I'm going to miss out on something. There was a sense of urgency from God, and I said, I have to go. And he said, okay, just stay the weekend. And so the last weekend, because my mom stayed the whole month, she was only there for the month of May. So yeah, the last weekend in May I stayed, I believe. Yeah. And oh yeah, because when it was time for me to go, we both went to the bus station, and the air in Ottawa is dry and a bit cooler. It's kind of thin breathing, not thin, but easy breathing. And I fell asleep on the bus, and he said it took all his strength to walk away, so he did, but I fell asleep on the bus. I had my duffel bag, my pack sack. I had no clue where I was gonna sleep that night. It was early morning. I had no clue who was in St. Catharines. I had not lived there in years, but it felt like I was being obedient to God. And I was like, I said, God, catch me. Yeah, I'm jumping. Here I go. Taking the leap, and I fell asleep the whole bus ride. And when I woke up, it was in the evening time. The air was thick and hot and humid. You know, it was a shock, because I woke up and it was like the world changed. You know, and I was like, what? It was new life, you know, but at the same time scary, because I'd have no clue where I'm going to sleep, where I'm going to go as soon as I get off the bus. And I remember looking around, and I was like, what am I doing? I know I'm doing the right thing, but what exactly am I doing? You know, I had no clue. I just knew I was being obedient to God. And as soon as I got off the bus, I said, okay, well, I guess I'll go to the homeless shelter, because I don't know where else to go, and I'm broke. I have no money. I have no contacts. So I went there, and it was a woman's shelter, and I got a room. And I went to go eat supper, and I stayed in my room, and I was just like, I have to come up with a plan of, you know, I have to find a place. And within 3 days, I had the best place for me. It was a basement rental. It was a room in a basement, but I had the whole room to myself. I had my own fireplace, and it was real. It was furnished. All the furniture was new and clean. I had my own bathroom. I had a monthly bus pass. I had a job lined up that I would start soon after. I was safe. I went to this church as the secretary. Is there like a job board or a community board where I can see, where I can find a room rental listing? And she just kind of like, oh, I have a room rental. I have a room for rent that's available. And the next day, that's where I ended up. It was a great place in a good neighborhood, close to all these amenities, and you know, and it was wow. God, I jumped, and God caught me. He didn't just give me a place to stay. He gave me a good, clean place to stay in a Christian home. He caught me really, really well. He did a really great job. He did more than I expected. I was surprised. Oh, and I had a few $100s cash on hand, and I was I remember feeling taken aback by the goodness of God. And that was June 2013 that God caught me. And he showed me, he proved to me, after I had the faith, not before. He had to show me after. He showed me that he is a good father, that he takes care of his babies, and he loved me. I'm trying not to cry, sorry. Anyway, so that was the start of my new life, you know, like living for God again, praying, reading the Bible. It was the start of that. And so Samson started this relationship, this unsanctioned relationship. It was unholy. It was not God's will. Because we're not even supposed to be unequally yoked, you know, with unbelievers. And she was just part of that marine kingdom, you know, a follower. She wore the things that they wore. She was manipulative. She was a liar, you know, and there were key elements to that relationship that coincided with the one that I had just come out of. And what happened to Samson was she tricked him, she lied to him, and managed to get the source of his strength cut off from him. And because he would not, because he stayed with her, you know, in this unholy alliance, and he ended up losing his strength. You know, he got taken into captivity. And they didn't just take his eyesight. A lot of people forget that he ended up as a slave. And his work that he did as a slave, if you can call it that, was he had to push this big wheel. It was like sitting flat, like a plate. And it had, you know, the bars around it. And he would walk in circles, blinded, walk in circles, pushing that wheel around. And that was how he worked as a slave. And God was showing me parallels to what happened to Samson and to what my life could have been had I not left, when God told me to leave and he gave me that sense of urgency. And so had I stayed in that relationship, I would have been like Samson. I would have been in captivity, in this emotional captivity, spiritual and mental captivity, in a toxic relationship, you know, and I would have been just laboring non-stop, just walking in circles non-stop, yet getting nowhere, as Samson had ended up. And so that would have been my fate. You know, God is a rescuer. I didn't have to go through any of that. You know, God told me from the start, from the first few seconds that I laid eyes on this man that I thought was somebody else, by the way, stay away from him. And I didn't. I was curious. Because I wanted to, well, reconnect with someone that I had met in St. Catharines, but also I was curious because that was my first relationship. So you remember, because I didn't know how to flirt and I thought all men were evil and predatory in nature, that I stayed away, you know, and I wasn't social throughout my 20s, throughout my youth. So I never dated. I never wanted to date. I thought it was a trap, you know. I thought it was, people are like trapped in these relationships, and you know, I would see the dark side, like all the women in my family were physically abused, and I would witness these abuses. You know, this one relative, I remember when I was a kid, I watched her. I was scared. I was frozen standing there. And I watched her get dragged across the floor by her ankle, and she's screaming. You know, and I had these images in my head of I never wanted to date anybody, because if I do and I love them, what if I stay with them even though they do these terrible, horrible things? Which also, you know, I thought all men were evil, so I thought it was a surety. A sure thing, I thought. And this relationship that I had gotten out of, it was exactly what I feared. You know, it was never physically abusive, but it was abusive in other ways. It was emotional abuse. It was mental abuse. I was being lied. He lied about me so many times, you know. There's just all these things that God just wanted to protect me from. But also, he was not the man that God would have me to be with. So if you're in a relationship, you know, don't get physical. That's just the first of all. You know, because women, we are created to emotional creatures, and a lot of women, you know, they might not like to hear that, but it's true. We were made in the image of God, and God has emotions, and you know, this is how we were created to be, and it's supposed to be a good thing to feel these feelings, but not, you know, but not to be controlled by them. And I was because I had a soul tie, my will was tied to his. Remember the explanation of the soul tie, interwoven and held on. And so that's why you see all these people, you know, they're in relationships, not everybody, but you know, you'll know what I mean when I say it. They are so obviously not good for each other. And it doesn't mean they're bad people necessarily. Like, there are some people who are, you know, they're well liked, they're not mean to other people, but you see them in the relationship and they just don't fit. They're toxic. You know, there's a lot of things that go with an unholy soul tie. What happens is you don't just cling to each other. All the demons that you are influenced by or may even have attached to you, if you're not in Christ, they influence people, and they whisper to people lies. And so you see these people, they're in relationships and they really should not be in a relationship with each other. Such was the case with me and this guy. But God is good, you know. He talks to us in many ways. He's not just a voice from heaven. He talks to us in his word. Get in the word. You want clarity? Get in the word. You want to hear what God says? Read what he already said. He is the God that does not change. He is the same yesterday, today, and forever. So read his word to find out what he says about relationships and soul ties and purity and waiting on the Lord. Because he's a good God. He sees the beginning and the end and every space in between. He knows not just what's best, but he knows how to protect us. And sometimes he needs our cooperation, our obedience to protect us. Because like I said, I could have chosen to stay in that relationship. But God is good. And I remember his goodness. And I said, I'd rather have God than this. And I chose God. You know, I took that leap of faith, not knowing where I would end up, and he caught me. He took such good care of me. And he saved me from the same fate that Samson had gone to endure. And here I am now, you know, I'm still alive, I'm still breathing. God has given me another day. I don't know how long I'm going to be on this earth. He has been giving me the urge to give my testimony for a year now, almost to the day. And I had been reluctant because these were things that I didn't want to talk about, because I didn't know how to bring them up, and I was being disobedient. But it's time that I obey and I share these testimonies with people, because the season that we're in, the world has gotten so dark in such a short time. The darkness has increased, but the light of God has also increased. And the rapture, if you believe in it or not, the goal should always be to be obedient and safe. Like your eternal security is what I mean by safe. Sometimes God would have us say and do things, and we have to be willing to be obedient, because we might not like the physical outcome. Some people say the safest place to be is in the palm of God. Some people say actually the most dangerous place to be is in the palm of God, physically, like the physically most dangerous place. There are people who have chosen to suffer because they'd rather have God. They'd rather stay obedient to God, and if they suffer a little while, that's the cross they carry, then okay. The whole point is just listen and obey God from the beginning. The only relationship that truly matters eternally is the one you have with the Holy Spirit. The one we gain through Christ. The only way to the Father is through Jesus. That is the only way. So if any of you watching this, listening to this, needs to repent, please do so quickly, because tomorrow is not promised. If you feel a sense of urgency, that's God. That's God trying to get your attention. Don't end up like Samson.